Okay, Jerry. Now, anyone that's watched the 4 parts will probably be hoping this is another action-packed betting ring story. But I didn't even realise until we started talking that well, you're very well connected, not only in the horse racing and the greyhound business, but you know where to get tickets for the Oasis reunion, don't you?
Well, I wish, but the other strain to my life has been the music industry. I could spend a week talking about
You got 15
how
minutes.
things happened. I've got 15 minutes, right? Well, basically, I lived in St Mary Cray for a while in a flat that we in a council flat that we rented, very glamorous. We sublet it off of a person, and one day the flat caught on fire. It was burning. All the corridor was alight, and I kept hearing this banging on the door. It was about 7:30 in the morning, and I thought my friend that I lived there with, a guy called John Ramsey, was a window cleaner, and I thought maybe John's forgotten something. And the banging got louder and louder and louder, and then the top of an axe head, I later found out, came through the door, and they said, "You've got to vacate the property, Mrs. Tillman's." And I thought, no, that was the name of the person that sublet it. It was on the forms. Anyway, they got a blanket over me. They took me down the corridor. The building was alight. So I was told later on that day that someone had been killed in the fire, and it was a very sad thing. And I told them who I really was, and John had said who he really was, because they had to account for everybody in the building, women and children. And I was homeless, so I had a choice of going back to my mum's or going into London and staying with a couple of friends of mine that were just turning up on them. Don't forget, there's no mobile phones then. I can't phone people up. Anyway, I go into London, into Camden, because I knew there was a few sort of like musicy places. I got one small bag, like a big sort of like leather holdall. And I went into a pub, the first pub that I came to in Inverness Street, called the Good Mixer, which has now become the headquarters of Britpop. It was back in the day. It was where all the colourful bohemians, the characters, the musos, cartoonists, writers, anyone associated with the music industry, A&R people, everybody. So I went in there, and it was run by some Australian sort of people behind the bar, and it was full of people. And I looked over into the corner, and I immediately saw Jarvis Cocker, and I immediately saw someone from a band back in the Britpop days, menswear. And then I saw a guy with glasses, who I knew as Graham Coxon from Blur, you know, one of the other half of Blur, Damon Albarn, Graham, you know, one of the, possibly the greatest guitarist modern day that there is. And I kind of knew who he was. Anyway, there was loads of people in there. It was mascara was dripping. It was everything. It was rock and it was like, you know, it was like the New York Dolls could have walked in. It was real rock and roll. There was a Miss America pinball table. Justine Frischman from Elastic, who went on to form one of the biggest female-fronted indie bands, was in there. I remember putting my bag down and somebody saying to me, "Hello, Jerry, how you doing?" And this was someone that I loosely knew. And I went, "All right." He said, "What's happened? You smell of smoke?" I said, "I've just been, my flat burnt down today." I said, "I've got a few things in a bag. Can't go back to Betty's," Betty being my mum. I said, "So I've come here and I've tried to contact a couple of my mates. I thought they might be here, but they're not." And he went, "Oh, so what are you going to do? Where are you going to sleep?" And I said, "Well, I haven't really got anywhere." And he said, "Hold on a second." My friend went over to Graham Coxon. So Graham Coxon came over and he went, "Hello, he said, you're a friend of Mick's." I went, "Yes, mate, yeah." He said, I'm Graham." He said, I said, "Oh, I'm Jerry, nice to meet you." He said, "Play pool, do you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm very good though." I said, I'll give you a game." He said, "Oh, full of it." He went, "I like you, mate." I got a cue. Graham broke off and I think I had a couple of balls left. And Graham beat me on the black. He said, "You let me win?" I said, "No, of course not, don't be stupid." He said, "I thought you were good." He said, "You're rubbish." Anyway, we started drinking and it got a bit more sort of like, we all got a bit more tipsy and this and that. And all of a sudden, he shouted out, "Last orders, please, at the bar," you know. And I said, "Well, are you going on somewhere else now?" And he said, "No," he said, "I think that's it, really." I said, "Oh, that's a shame." I said, "Oh, I've got nowhere to go, really." And he said, "Oh," he said, "I've got a big like mansion house." He said, 4-storey house. He said, "I'm in Blur." He said, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh, I working at the horses, like bookmaking and stuff like that." He said, "So you got nowhere to live?" He said, "Oh, come and live with me then." So we went up and walked up to Rochester Place. Oh, I shouldn't give an address, but we walked up to the old up Camden High Road, and we went into the house. And then he said, "There you go." He said, you make yourself downstairs." And there was like a futon, and I stayed there and got up in the morning and looked around, and of course it was all discs even then were, because they hadn't been going long, but they were big from the start. So of course this became a fixture, and I sort of stayed there and loved it and got very close to Graham, and we've always been great friends. And as I say, living with him was great. I had a key, I could come and go as I wanted. And then he said to me, listen, my partner, my current girlfriend, then was a lady called Anna Norlander. Her mother was one of the most famous Scandinavian photographers. He said, there's a room in her house if you want to go there and take that over. And then that will give you your own place. And I left his, and then I went up to Brecknock Road to a flat there and moved in. And it was great. And as I say, Blur was a very big part of my life. Around that time, I got a job running a door at the Falcon, which was a music venue in Camden where everybody played. And there was a good Oasis story. We had a charity night there for someone that had a child that wasn't very well, and the record label that Oasis were on at the time, Creation, had promised a guitar. Anyway, you know what things are. People promise things and this and that, and it might have been just hearsay, but the guitar didn't turn up. But Liam Gallagher did turn up with his entourage. I was on the door. It was like a five. We used to say in the Falcon, it was a £5 to get in. It was 20 quid to get out, because there was always a bit of trouble in there. It was always a bit edgy. And I was standing on the door, and these people come past, just walked past the table, didn't want to pay, didn't want to do anything. I said, hold on a minute. I said, don't work like that. I said, you got paid to come in here. I said, the bands only get like 30 quid for playing or something. He said, shut up. Oh, I thought, I'm not having this. So behind the four of them was Liam Gallagher. And I said, do you think just because you're famous, you can push past? He said, why don't you shut up, man? He said, I'll do what I like, Like, what's the matter, man? I said, where's the guitar? He said, what guitar? And then somebody pushed me on the shoulder, and then Liam Gallagher pushed me on my shoulder, and I pushed him, and we ended up on the floor having a rough and a tumble. So it was all made up, and there was no animosity there or anything. And I've gone on to be, I've met his brother Paul on many occasions at lots of different things. He's a mutual friend of my friend in Buzzcocks, which leads on to my final life-changing story. I've been invited to go and see Buzzcocks at the Astoria. Now, I wasn't really overly familiar with their music. I knew they were iconic, and I knew that, excuse me, that their tunes were just great. I'd heard a couple. So I went to this particular show, and I just loved every moment of it, from the kick-in of the vocals, from Pete Shelley's vocals to Steve's wonderful guitar playing, Tony Barber, Phil Barker, wonderful. I became as addicted to Buzzcocks as I did to music, to anything. Anyway, we went backstage and had a few drinks, and it was, everything was going really well, but I felt a bit sort of overwhelmed by it all, and they were lovely to me. And I had some nice pictures taken with Pete Shelley and Diggle, and I felt really sort of at ease in their company. And again, I was sort of living out the suitcase, and I was going to different racetracks and this and that, and I always had sort of money on me and different things, so I was never frightened of staying out late, travelling, going to a hotel or whatever. Outside, where the doors opened to move the equipment, was a huge big tour bus. This tour bus had been used by Metallica previously, and Buzzcocks had got it for their UK tour. And it was like one of those old sleeper buses. And I thought, you know what? I'd had a few drinks, and I was always a bit sort of game. And I just went in and climbed up onto one of the bunks and got into bed. I fell fast asleep. So when I woke up, I could hear voices, thinking it was probably like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't. It was 11 o'clock the following day. I'd gone down to Portsmouth with them, and I thought, well, I better go and sort of go to their table and make myself known. I went over to the table and made myself known. I said, sorry, I got on the bus last night. And they went, well, we knew you were there, but we didn't know how to approach it and everything. It's hilarious. He said, we've had super fans and things before, but we've never had anyone that wasn't female try and get on our tour bus. And then Tony Barber, the bass player, piped up and he said, oh, you know my dad from Walthamstow Dog Track? I thought, how does he know that? I've been talking about it. He said, yeah. He said, I knew you were from the other night, and you're most welcome. And I ended up doing all the remaining 4 tour dates with them. And and that was stuff of legend. There is one thing that I didn't say in the earlier thing that's quite mad. When you look back on your life and you look at things you've done, you talk about Rocky, and this is just back to horse racing again, but it's just come into my head, and I think I must say this. I was on a train with Rocky travelling from Paddington one day to Newbury Racecourse, and I was representing one of my biggest customers at the time, an underworld figure. The name's irrelevant. But I had his bets, and I had over 30,000 on me in cash. Now, we'd been playing cards, Kaluki, on that train, and the guy had come through to collect tickets. And I hadn't purchased a ticket, and I lied about where I got on the train. So I got my cards, put my cards on the table, and was led by the revenue protection people to the guards van. And in the guards van, they asked me to write my name and address, where I was going, and where I truthfully got on the train. And I thought, I can't be bothered with all this. And there was a Liverpudlian guy standing next to me, and I said, do you know what, none of this makes any sense to me. I said, I'm not anti-authority, but I said I would have bought a train ticket, but I just got straight into the card aspect of it. He said, you don't have to tell me. I got the train door, the slam door, pulled it forward, and I jumped out like the 39 steps. I jumped out the train. I didn't know it was travelling at 100 mile an hour. So I landed on the track side, and I dislocated my shoulder. I was barely able to walk, and you know, when you look back on things now, it's stuff out of Boys Own Biggles and stuff like that. But I was just paranoid for some reason in my head that I would have to explain where this money had come from. And if I said to them, oh, I'm a bookmaker's runner, I just thought they're never going to believe me. They're going to take the money off of me, and I'm not going to be able to explain to the people where their money's gone. And I remember opening the newspaper on Monday morning, the Today newspaper, the Times and the Sun, and seeing the headlines, daring train cheat jumps for it. And I remember at the Dogs on the Tuesday, they'd said that at the racetrack, all the police officers had gone to the different bookmakers and said, do you know this train leaper, we know his Christian name's Jerry, not one of them gave me up. And it was all a bit of fun. And when I look back on my life, I was so lucky because there was a bridge 50 yards up the road and I'd have been killed outright. So like a cat's got 9 lives, I think I've used up mine really. So that was just something I wanted to get in. It just came to me then, and I thought, not possibly the right or the wrong time, but that was a fun part of my life.